I've driven buses through nearly every stretch of highway in the South, from the sun-bleached back roads of Alabama to the twisting cliffs of North Carolina. But when I got the offer to take over the Smoky Mountains tour route, something in me hesitated. It was a good gig, steady pay, decent hours, and the kind of quiet scenery that made most drivers relax. But there was something about those mountains, something old and watching, the kind of thing you don't see with your eyes but feel in the heavy silence between trees. Still, I took the job. The company that hired me was called Evergreen Trails. They ran these scenic buses through the national park, giving tourists a glimpse at waterfalls, wildlife, and ghost towns swallowed by time. The bus they assigned me was Bus 13, an older model with faded green paint and cracked leather seats that smelled faintly of pine and mildew. The number didn't bother me. I'm not the superstitious type, or at least I wasn't. My first day began in a small depot tucked between two ridges near Gatlinburg. A man named Hank, with a limp and a gravel voice, handed me a worn binder when I arrived. "These are the rules," he said, tapping the leather-bound cover with a thick finger. "Follow them exactly. No exceptions. Not even once." He didn't smile when he said it. Didn't look like he knew how. I opened the binder, expecting safety protocols or maintenance checklists, but it was something else entirely. Handwritten pages in fading ink, dated back decades. Some were stained. A few were torn. Each page listed a rule, and beside each rule was a warning. Rule 1, never begin the tour after 6:33 p.m. If you're behind schedule, skip the route. Return immediately. Rule 2, if you see a hitchhiker on the old logging road past mile marker 17, do not stop, no matter what they look like. Rule 3, if the forest goes silent, no birds, no insects, turn off the engine and wait exactly 7 minutes. Do not speak. Do not move. Rule 4, when passing through Fog Hollow, you may see someone in the rearview mirror that isn't physically present on the bus. Do not acknowledge them. Keep your eyes forward. Rule 5, never take Route 9A, even if GPS insists. That road was sealed for a reason. There were more. Each rule more bizarre than the last. I laughed at first, thinking maybe it was a joke, some kind of hazing ritual for new drivers. But Hank wasn't the joking type. When I looked back up, his eyes had turned cold. "Do you understand?" he asked. I nodded, unsure whether I was playing along or actually beginning to believe. My first tour was scheduled for 3:45 p.m. Just a small group, 6 tourists, mostly retirees with cameras and floppy hats, and one young couple from Chicago. I greeted them with a smile, helped them load their bags, and made the usual announcements about safety and seatbelts. They were friendly, chatty even, full of questions about bears and waterfalls and when the leaves would start to turn. As we pulled out of the depot, the mountains greeted us with their misty silence. The Smokies have a way of creeping up on you. One minute you're winding through a town, and the next, you're swallowed by towering ridges and ancient trees. The road curved like a serpent, always hiding what lay around the next bend. The first half of the tour went smoothly. We passed the lookout at Widow's Crest, stopped by the old mining ruins near Raven Rock, and even saw a herd of elk grazing in a meadow. The passengers were thrilled. Cameras clicked. Laughter filled the bus. It wasn't until we approached mile marker 17 that I remembered the binder's warnings. I glanced at the dashboard clock. It was 5:56 p.m. Plenty of time. Still, I found myself gripping the wheel a little tighter as we passed the weathered signpost. The road narrowed here, and the trees leaned in as if trying to whisper secrets to one another across the blacktop. That's when I saw him, a man standing by the edge of the road, dressed in old denim overalls and a flannel shirt, his back turned to us. One arm raised, thumb out. Just a hitchhiker. But something about him didn't sit right. He wasn't moving, wasn't shifting his weight or glancing back like most people do when they hear an engine. No, he stood completely still. I remembered the rule, do not stop, no matter what they look like. I pressed my foot gently on the gas and kept going. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, expecting him to fade into the trees. But he didn't. He was walking. Behind us, at the same speed as the bus. His legs weren't moving right. Too long, too smooth, as if the motion was being replayed on a loop. No one else seemed to notice. The tourists were too busy pointing at a hawk circling above the cliffs. I blinked, and he was gone. I didn't mention it to the passengers. What could I say? That the forest had spat out some kind of ghost and it was keeping pace with us? They'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. We reached Fog Hollow a few minutes later, and the temperature inside the bus dropped by at least 10 degrees. I checked the thermostat, still set at 72. A low mist clung to the windshield like cold breath. The road twisted downward into a dense basin where the trees grew so close together that they blocked out the remaining sunlight. I remembered the next rule. You may see someone in the rearview mirror that isn't physically present on the bus. Do not acknowledge them. I kept my eyes ahead, hands at 10 and 2. I drove slower now, feeling the weight of every twist in the road. I could feel the fog pressing in on us, like the mountain itself didn't want us passing through. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. In the mirror, someone was sitting in the back row, but there were no seats available. I had only 8 passengers, and every seat was accounted for. I glanced quickly, trying to dismiss it. A trick of the light. Maybe someone changed seats, but no, they weren't one of mine. The figure was dressed in something old-fashioned, a black dress, high collar, pale hands folded in her lap. I couldn't see her face. Her head was tilted down, shadowed by a dark veil. She didn't move, didn't blink. My hands started to sweat. I kept my eyes forward. The Chicago couple, sitting 2 rows behind me, started whispering to each other, something about the temperature. Then the young woman asked, "Did someone new get on at the last stop?" I didn't answer. The bus creaked as it rolled deeper into the fog. I could hear something now, a soft hum, like someone singing beneath their breath. It was coming from the back. 7 minutes. That's what the rule said. Wait 7 minutes. I checked the clock on the dash. We still had 2 minutes left. My heart thudded against my ribs. I could feel it in my throat. I couldn't tell if the humming was louder or if I was imagining it. Either way, I knew I couldn't look. Not in the mirror, not over my shoulder. I just drove. When the 7th minute passed, the fog thinned suddenly, as if someone had thrown back a curtain. Sunlight spilled back through the trees. The road straightened. The bus warmed up again. The humming stopped, and when I dared to glance back, just once, the back row was empty. We completed the tour and made it back to the depot by 6:27 p.m. No one said anything else. The tourists thanked me, filed off the bus, and went on their way, chatting about trees and elk and photo spots. They didn't know. They hadn't seen what I saw. But the woman from Chicago gave me a strange look as she stepped off. Not scared, not confused, just unsettled. And I knew then, without a doubt, that she'd seen the woman in black too. Hank met me as I pulled into the depot, binder in hand. He didn't ask questions, just nodded once, like he already knew. "Good," he said. "You followed the rules." I didn't reply. My hands were still trembling on the wheel. I drove the route again the next day, and the day after that. Each time, something new. Each time the rules got harder to follow. But the one thing I know now, more than anything else, is this. In the Smoky Mountains, some things ride with you whether you let them on or not. And the rules? They're not for keeping you safe. They're for keeping them out. By the time my 3rd tour rolled around, I had memorized every curve, bump, and hairpin turn along the mountain route. The rules had etched themselves into the back of my mind like carvings in stone. I didn't need the binder anymore. I could recite each one by heart, and I followed them religiously, because I had seen what happened when you didn't. I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing. The passengers didn't know, of course. To them, it was a scenic drive through America's most beautiful national park. But I knew better now. The Smokies didn't just show you beauty. They showed you what was hidden beneath it. My next tour group was larger, 11 passengers, a mix of families, a pair of older women traveling together, and a teenage boy glued to his phone. They loaded onto the bus around 3:30 p.m. The weather was clear, sky like glass, no signs of fog or shadow. For a brief moment, I wondered if maybe today would be normal. I should have known better. The tour started off smoothly, the usual reactions to the views, oohs and ahs, laughter, flash photography. I even found myself relaxing, smiling along with their questions about how long I'd been driving, whether I'd seen bears, and what the best lookout points were. We made our first stop near Moss Creek Ridge. I parked the bus, opened the doors, and let them stretch their legs for 15 minutes. I watched from the driver's seat while they wandered. It was quiet, peaceful. A breeze stirred the grass. A deer crossed the path below the ridge. That was when the old woman approached me. She wore a large sun hat and had the kind of face that looked like it had smiled most of its life, the kind you'd expect to be baking pies and spoiling grandkids. But her smile faded as she leaned in the open bus door and looked at me with sharp, serious eyes. "You missed the turn," she said. I blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "After Deadman's Curve. You were supposed to veer right, not left." I stared at her, unable to speak, because she was right. After the curve, a dangerous slope with a steep drop to one side, I had taken the left road without thinking. It was second nature, instinctual. But the correct route was to the right, the road that looped higher into the range. That other road, the left one, it wasn't even listed on our tour map. "You didn't notice?" she asked, still staring. "No," I said. "I didn't." She didn't seem angry, just unsettled. "Be careful, young man. Some roads take you places you're not meant to see." She turned and walked back to her seat. The rest of the group climbed on a few minutes later, laughing and sweaty, unaware that anything was wrong. I started the engine and checked the binder again, just to be sure. I flipped to the page on unmarked roads. There it was, scrawled in jagged handwriting. "If you find yourself on a road you don't recognize, do not turn around, do not stop. Drive until the road ends, and when you do not get out." The road we were on narrowed quickly. The trees pressed in tighter than usual, their branches tangled above us like a ceiling. The usual signs, trail markers, mileage posts, were gone. Even the sun seemed to disappear behind the ridge, though it was still barely past 4. And then the silence began. Not just quiet, silence. No wind, no birds, no rustling of leaves. Even the engine of the bus seemed muffled, like we were driving through a thick underwater world. The passengers noticed. I saw the glances, the shifting in their seats. One of the kids turned down his music. The 2 women who had been chatting fell silent. Then the teenager in the back raised his hand. "Hey, driver dude, did we take a wrong turn?" I didn't answer, because ahead I saw the road ending. Not in a parking lot or a rest area, just ending. The asphalt faded into cracked dirt, then grass, and then nothing. A thick wall of trees waited beyond it, motionless. I slowed the bus, heart thudding, remembering the rule, do not stop. But if I didn't stop, we'd crash into the woods. So I did the next best thing. I kept the wheels rolling, creeping forward inch by inch until the nose of the bus reached the very edge. The trees ahead of us weren't normal trees. They weren't any species I recognized. Black bark, jagged branches, no leaves. It looked like a forest burnt down 100 years ago, left standing in ash. I didn't want to get out. But someone, did. The door hissed open on its own. I hadn't touched the switch. Cold air blew inside. It smelled like earth and rust. A few of the passengers stood up, confused, maybe thinking it was another stop. I turned back in my seat, raising my voice. "Stay in your seats. No one gets off the bus. I mean it." That was when we heard the footsteps, coming from the woods. Soft, wet, dragging, and something else, breathing, low, labored, like whatever was out there had been running for a long time, or hunting. The trees began to part, just slightly, enough for a shape to emerge. I couldn't tell what it was, tall, humanoid, but not quite right, like it had too many joints or none at all. It shimmered slightly, as if it didn't fully belong in our world. The air around it pulsed, and I swear I heard a sound, not out loud but inside my head, like static and screaming and old voices whispering at once. One of the passengers screamed. The shape stepped closer. I slammed the door control. Nothing happened. It stayed open. The shape raised one long arm, reaching toward the opening. And then the old woman stood up again. She walked slowly to the front, gripping the poles as she moved. She stood by the door, facing the thing outside. "You know you're not welcome here," she said. Her voice wasn't afraid. The thing paused. And then it began to shudder, like something was breaking inside it. A sound escaped it, not pain, rage. It lunged, but it never touched her. She raised one hand and whispered something I couldn't understand. The thing froze in place. Then it began to dissolve, not into smoke, but into wind. 100 strands of black air whipping away into the forest. Gone. The door slammed shut. Silence, real silence this time, the peaceful kind. The road ahead was clear again. No strange trees, just pavement. I blinked. Had it all been in my head? No. The passengers looked terrified. It had been real. The old woman turned to me. "That road's not meant to be driven," she said. "Something is weakening the boundaries here." I stared at her. "What are you?" She gave a tired smile. "Just someone who remembers. Keep driving, son. You're not done yet." I turned the bus around. This time the GPS worked. The real road was waiting just a few miles back. We rejoined the tour without another incident. But something had changed in the air. The passengers didn't speak. Some stared out the windows in silence. Others kept their eyes on the floor. When we returned to the depot, the sun had already dipped behind the trees. I checked the clock. 6:29 p.m. Barely made it. Hank was waiting for me again. This time, he didn't say a word, just nodded and handed me a new page for the binder. It had only one line. "There's a new rule now. If the bus door opens by itself, close it fast, or something will climb inside that doesn't want to leave." After the last tour, I didn't sleep. Not because I wasn't tired. I was, more than ever. But something had changed, deep down in my bones. Like a thread had been pulled loose in reality, and now I could see the frayed edges. The thing I saw in the woods wasn't the worst part. It was the old woman. The way she stood there, calm and knowing, like she'd done it before. Like she belonged to whatever secret this place held. And the fact that I had taken the wrong road without realizing, that scared me more than anything. Because if the Smokies could influence my choices without my knowing, what else could they do? I thought about quitting. But when I woke up the next morning, if you could call it sleep at all, I found a note tucked into the windshield of my car. It wasn't handwritten. It looked like it had been typed on an old typewriter. "The mountains remember their drivers. If you leave before they're finished with you, they will come to collect what's theirs." There was no signature. I didn't need one. I showed up for work that evening, face pale and stomach sour. Hank gave me a once-over and handed me the updated binder. No comment. No small talk. I opened to the latest rule. Rule 14. If someone tries to flag down the bus along Route Hollow Bend, keep driving. Do not stop. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to them. Even if they look familiar. Especially if they look familiar. I didn't like that last part. Especially if they look familiar. It made my skin crawl. The group that night was small, just 6 people. A quiet middle-aged couple, a group of 3 college students, and a solo rider. A woman in her 20s with short black hair and tired eyes. She sat up front, earbuds in, staring out the window with the kind of heaviness that told me she wasn't here for sightseeing. We departed at 3:15 p.m. The weather was strangely warm for the season, with the kind of still air that makes your ears ring. The road was mostly clear. No fog, no strange detours. It almost felt normal, until we reached Route Hollow Bend. The bend is sharp, a 90-degree elbow with a steep slope on one side and a ridge wall on the other. Trees hang overhead, their limbs arching over the road like bony arms. It always gave me a weird feeling, even before I read Rule 14. As I approached the bend, I slowed the bus slightly, and that's when I saw him. A man stood just past the curve, right on the edge of the road. Thumb out, backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked like any normal hiker, like dressed in cargo pants and a red flannel shirt. But something was off. His clothes were too clean, his stance too perfect, like he wasn't standing on the ground but just above it, hovering by a centimeter. And then he turned his head. I felt my heart seize, because I recognized him. It was my older brother Marcus. Dead 6 years. Same smirk, same lazy posture, same scar above the right eyebrow from the bike accident when we were kids. I slammed the brakes. Instinct took over. I forgot the rule. I forgot everything. The bus groaned to a halt, tires skidding on the pavement. Gasps erupted behind me. I reached for the door lever. The woman in the front seat grabbed my arm. "Don't," she said. I looked at her. She had pulled out her earbuds. Her eyes were wide, not just afraid, terrified. "You saw him too?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "It was my sister, but she's been gone 10 years. The man outside, Marcus, smiled and waved at me. Not desperate, not frantic, just friendly. I stared into his eyes. They were empty, glassy, like someone wearing a mask of my brother's face. The voice of the old woman echoed in my mind. "Some roads take you places you're not meant to see." I took my foot off the brake. The bus jerked forward. Marcus stepped into the center of the road. He held out his hand palm up, mouth moving, but I couldn't hear anything. Maybe that was a mercy. I swerved, not hard, just enough to slide past him, but the second the side mirror passed his body, something slammed into the bus. Everyone screamed. I didn't stop. I didn't even look in the mirror. I pressed the accelerator and didn't let up until we were half a mile down the road. When I finally eased off the gas, the bus creaked and shook. Something felt wrong in the wheels, like the suspension was off. I pulled into a gravel overlook to inspect the damage. No one said anything. I stepped out and walked around the bus. The side panel was scraped, deep gashes along the metal, like something had clawed it. The back wheel well had a dent the size of a man's torso. But that wasn't what made me freeze. It was the black handprint on the emergency exit. Perfect, wet, like it had been painted in oil. When I climbed back inside, the passengers were huddled together. The woman who grabbed my arm spoke first. I think it tried to get in. I nodded, still breathless. What was that? No one had an answer, but someone had left something behind. On the seat directly behind mine, a Polaroid photo was lying face up. I picked it up. It was Marcus and me, from when we were kids, sitting on the hood of Dad's old truck, smiling. I had never brought that photo to work, never even seen it since the funeral, and now it was here. I turned it over. Words had been scrawled on the back in something dark red. You almost let it in. We finished the tour in silence. No one asked questions. No one took pictures. When we got back to the depot, Hank was waiting for me. He didn't speak, just handed me a small envelope and walked away. Inside was a new insert for the binder. It was smudged, like it had been copied from something very old. It read, "There is more than one hitchhiker. They wear the faces you love. If you let them in, they will not leave alone." And below that, something scribbled in handwriting. "You passed this time, but they'll try again." I went home that night and searched every drawer for that old Polaroid, the original. I finally found it in my closet, tucked in a box of childhood stuff. Still there, still real, but now it had a twin, and I didn't know which was which anymore. I stopped asking questions after the hitchhiker. Some part of me still hoped that maybe I was just cracking under the pressure. Maybe all the stories, the warnings, the strange roads, and phantom faces were just stress hallucinations. But every time I turned the key in the ignition and that bus rumbled to life, the Smoky Mountains reminded me that I was wrong. It wasn't stress. It wasn't imagination. These things were real, and worse, they were learning. The next afternoon, Hank didn't say a word when I arrived. He just looked at me the way a doctor might look at a patient he couldn't help, equal parts pity and helplessness. Then he handed me the updated binder with a new page clipped inside. It was written in shaky, rushed handwriting. Rule 18. If the fog rolls in suddenly and thickens in less than a minute, pull over immediately. Shut off the engine. Tell the passengers not to speak. Not even a whisper. Do not open the windows. Do not make eye contact with anyone outside the bus. The fog is not weather. It is aware. I reread the line, "It is aware," 3 times. I folded the page back into the binder and told myself, again, to follow the rules. That's all I had to do. Just obey the rules. That evening's tour was nearly full, 13 passengers, 3 kids, a couple honeymooning, a photographer from Seattle, and an older man who said he used to be a park ranger. His name was Daniel, and he had the kind of voice that demanded respect, even in casual conversation. He took the back seat and watched everything like a hawk. We left just past 3 p.m. The weather was beautiful. Golden hour creeping over the ridge lines, casting long shadows across the valleys. I thought, maybe, just maybe, this would be an easy one. We were an hour into the route when it started. I just passed a scenic overlook near Timberline Crest when the first wisp of fog curled across the road. Nothing unusual. This time of year, mountain mist was common, rolling over the treetops in long, ghost-like streams. But then, like someone had flipped a switch, the world went white. Not gradually, instantly. One blink, and I could barely see 5 feet in front of the windshield. Passengers gasped. Some of the kids squealed. I tapped the brakes and flicked on the hazard lights. And then I remembered the rule. If the fog rolls in suddenly and thickens in less than a minute, it had taken 10 seconds. I eased the bus to the shoulder, heart thudding in my chest. I cut the engine. The bus went quiet. The fog swallowed us whole. Everything outside the windows vanished. No trees, no road, not even the sun. Just a thick, blank nothing. I stood up slowly. My voice was calm, but firm. I need everyone to remain in their seats. Don't speak. Don't open the windows. Don't look outside. Nervous murmurs rippled through the bus. One man laughed softly, thinking it was a joke. It's just fog, man. What's the... The woman next to him grabbed his arm and shook her head. Something knocked against the side of the bus. What's not a tap, not a branch brushing by, a knock. 3 short raps, right beneath the passenger window. The laughter stopped. Everyone froze. Another knock, this time near the back. I looked toward Daniel, the old ranger. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He mouthed something to me. Don't look. The fog pressed in harder. I could feel it now. Not like weather, not damp or cool, but like presence. Like something immense and ancient was outside, pressing its face against the glass, staring in. A child began to whimper. Her mother held her tightly, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. Then something moved past the windshield. A shape, a human silhouette, tall and still. No features, just a black outline in the mist. It didn't walk. It slid, right to left, slow, deliberate. I held my breath. Another figure joined it, then another. 5, 6, more. Surrounding the bus, not touching, just watching. I gripped the steering wheel to keep my hands from shaking, my eyes locked on the dashboard. I didn't look out. Behind me, someone whispered. Who are they? I turned sharply. It was the photographer from Seattle. He had pulled his phone halfway out of his bag, camera app glowing. I moved fast. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just walked back there, took the phone gently from his hand and powered it off. Then I pointed at the floor. He understood. He slumped into his seat and didn't speak again. The fog didn't move. Time stopped having meaning. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. All I knew was that my knees ached and the air inside the bus felt heavier by the second. Then someone outside spoke. Not a voice I recognized. Not human. Not even animal. It was mimicry. Like a recording warped through static and bone. Let us in. The voice echoed through the fog from every direction. Let us in. Again and again. Let us in. Some of the children began to cry. The parents looked to me. I did the only thing I could think of. I got back in the driver's seat, shut my eyes, and waited. The voice changed. It became familiar. Marcus, come on, little bro, open the door. Then it became my mother. My baby boy, please. It's cold out here. Then it became me. My own voice, begging, whimpering. Let me in. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed still. I obeyed the rule, and eventually the fog began to thin. First at the front of the bus, then the sides, then the back. The figures vanished, not into the mist, but as if they'd never been there at all. The sunlight pierced through like a blade. Birdsong returned. Air rushed back into my lungs like I'd been drowning. I turned the key. The bus roared to life. No one clapped. No one cheered. We just drove. Silently. I skipped the last stop on the tour and brought them straight back. Hank met me at the depot again. He looked me over once and nodded. You saw it, he said, not a question. Yeah. Did it see you? I didn't answer. He handed me a new insert. This one was printed on yellowing paper, older than the others. There was a single sentence. If the fog speaks in a familiar voice, do not listen. It knows what breaks you. On the back, scribbled in pen, and it gets closer each time. I didn't remember driving home that night. One moment I was handing Hank the keys, and the next I was standing in my apartment, shoes still on, lights off, holding the binder like it had grown roots into my hand. Sleep came in waves, like falling down an endless hill. My dreams were colorless and echoing, faces staring through fog, knocking on glass, whispering things in my own voice. When I woke the next morning, I found a bruise on my thigh, a long, deep handprint, too large to be mine. I didn't remember being grabbed, not during the fog, not after. I sat there for a long time, staring at that bruise. It hadn't hurt until I noticed it. Around noon, I received a message from dispatch. They were shuffling the schedule. Too many new hires had already quit, and Hank had called off due to exhaustion. That meant I'd be handling 2 back-to-back tours today. No time to recover, no room to think. The message ended with, keep the rules with you. Trust them. I showed up at 2:30, earlier than usual, and sat in the parked bus for a while, just thinking. I opened the binder and reread every rule slowly, one by one. My hands trembled when I reached the newer ones. The ink looked fresh. some even smudged at the edges, like the words didn't want to stay on the page. That day's binder had a new insert slipped in the back. It wasn't labeled with a rule number. No bold letters. Just a single line, hastily scrawled in black ink. You may find yourself with more passengers than you remember. Do not speak to them. Do not acknowledge them. Drop them off last. I stared at it for a long time. That rule wasn't even formatted like the others. It felt like a warning added in a rush, like whoever wrote it didn't have time to file it properly. Still, I nodded to myself and tucked it back into the folder. The first tour was smooth. It was warm, sunny, nothing unusual. 9 tourists, quiet, friendly. A couple of questions about bears, a few too many jokes about banjo music. The kind of normalcy I hadn't seen in weeks. No fog, no hitchhikers, no wrong turns. I started to think the mountain was giving me a break. But then came the second tour. 12 passengers. I counted twice. 12 checked in, 12 boarded. I remembered their faces. 2 kids, 3 couples, and a trio of travel vloggers from New York. I wrote their countdown like I always did. The route started normal again. Dusk rolled in gently, the road open and clear, mountains glowing golden in the fading light. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Somewhere around Ridge Hollow Curve, one of the kids asked if we could take the ghost detour. I told him no. He pouted but let it go. I kept glancing in the mirror. Something was off. It took me another 15 minutes to realize what. There were 13 people on the bus, not 12. The 13th sat in the 4th row from the back against the window. I couldn't see their face. Hoodie up, arms crossed, body angled toward the window. I hadn't seen them board, hadn't heard them speak. And when I looked closer, really focused, I realized something horrifying. No one was sitting next to them, but no one was reacting to them either. No glances, no small talk, no acknowledgement, like they weren't even there. But I saw them. I stared at the mirror longer than I should have. And then they slowly turned their head toward me. The hood shifted, just enough to catch a glimpse of the face. It was my own. Pale, gray-eyed, mouth slightly open in a twitching half smile. I looked away immediately, heart thundering. I slammed the binder open and flipped to the new note. You may find yourself with more passengers than you remember. I swallowed hard, and I drove. The next 2 hours were torture. Every time I glanced in the mirror, the figure was still there, never moving, never blinking, but it watched me. I could feel it. The other passengers carried on like nothing was wrong. The kids chatted, the vloggers filmed clips, the couples asked polite questions, but the air inside the bus grew thick, like we were underwater, like something unseen had joined us and dragged the weight of the mountain in with it. Then the lights inside the cabin flickered, twice. Then the intercom crackled to life. A sound came through, a garbled whisper. It was my voice, but I hadn't touched the mic. Let me off. The sound sent chills down my spine. I reached up and shut the intercom off manually. It clicked. Silence. I drove the rest of the tour straight through. No stops. No scenic pullovers. I didn't care about the itinerary anymore. I just needed to get back. By the time we arrived at the depot, it was almost 10 p.m. The parking lot lights flickered overhead. The air was cold, colder than it had any right to be in June. I opened the door. The passengers began to file out. 1, 2, 3. I counted under my breath. 10, 11, 12. They all stepped off, chatting, stretching, thanking me. I didn't see the 13th. I waited. I didn't move. Then slowly, I turned in my seat and looked back. The bus was empty. All the seats were clear, except for the 4th row from the back, where something had been sitting just moments ago. Now there was only a small object on the seat. A name tag. Old. Yellowed. With the same name as mine. I didn't own a name tag. Never had. I walked to the back and picked it up. The plastic felt warm. On the back, someone had scratched a message into the surface. You let me ride. That means I get to stay. I dropped it like it burned me. I didn't tell Hank. Didn't tell anyone. But when I got home that night, something was different. The pictures on my wall were all crooked. The hallway light turned on by itself, and from the bedroom just beyond the cracked door, I saw a shape sitting on the edge of my bed, wearing my clothes, watching me, waiting. I turned and left. I slept in the bus depot office that night, but the dream still found me. I didn't go home after that night. I couldn't. Whatever climbed onto the bus pretending to be me had followed me back. It didn't matter that I never spoke to it, never acknowledged it. It had ridden along, and according to the scratched message on the name tag, that meant it had the right to stay. The next morning, I sat in the employee lounge of the depot, nursing a stale coffee. I hadn't changed clothes, hadn't showered. The lights buzzed above me like they were shorting out, and every shadow felt like it was moving when I wasn't looking. Hank came in just after 7 a.m. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't need to. He sat down across from me, dropped a manila envelope on the table, and slid it toward me without a word. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not from the official binder. This one was handwritten, almost like a farewell note. It read, "Final rule. One day, the mountain will choose you. When that day comes, you won't need a schedule. You won't get a route. You'll just wake up knowing where to go. If you fight it, the mountain will take someone else in your place. Someone who didn't deserve it. So when it's time, drive, finish the route, complete the loop, and don't look back." There was no signature, just a faded smudged ring near the bottom of the page. Maybe a coffee stain, maybe blood. Hank finally spoke. "It's calling you, isn't it?" I nodded. "It's tonight." He sighed. "Then you already know where to go." And I did. No itinerary, no passengers, just me. And the mountain. I waited until dusk, then climbed into bus 7. She was old, beat up, and moody, but somehow she'd survived all this with me. I didn't even need to start the engine. It rumbled to life the moment I sat down, like it had been waiting too. The depot was empty. Even the night security guard wasn't at his post. I didn't punch in. I didn't check the binder. I just drove. The mountain road stretched ahead like a mouth waiting to swallow me. The shadows grew long and deep, curling like tendrils between the trees. Fog crept in low, not thick enough to blind me, just enough to whisper, "I'm here." About 10 minutes in, I saw the hitchhiker again. Same spot, same stance, same crooked smile. Only this time, he didn't try to board. He just stood there and waved, like someone saying goodbye. I drove past without stopping. Further in, I saw the woman with no face. She was crawling across the pavement, her arms twitching like broken marionette strings. She didn't look at me, just kept dragging herself forward. The bus lights flickered as I passed. Further still, I reached the stretch where the fog had once spoken to me. It was waiting there again, thicker now, like a living wall. I didn't stop. I didn't cut the engine. This time, I drove through it, and it parted. On the other side, the road changed. I don't mean a fork or a detour. I mean the road itself became different. Older, rougher, overgrown at the edges, with trees that leaned in too far, their limbs brushing against the windows like fingers. The air inside the bus turned ice cold. And then I saw the station. Not the depot. Not anything man-made. A wide clearing with an ancient stone platform in the center. Weathered wooden posts rose from the ground like grave markers. Atop them were carved faces, not human, not quite. Twisted expressions, some weeping, some screaming, some smiling too wide. The bus rolled to a stop on its own. The doors hissed open. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, from the trees they came. Figures, dozens of them, all familiar, all wrong. The old park ranger Daniel, but his skin was stone and his eyes were hollow. The woman with no face, now walking upright, blood running down her neck like tears. The fog figures sliding soundlessly across the ground. And finally the version of me, the doppelganger. It stepped onto the bus like it belonged there, sat in my seat, placed its hands on the wheel, and smiled. Then it turned to look at me. Not angry, not malicious, just patient, waiting. The air shifted. I felt it in my bones. This was the trade. This was the loop. Every driver had a final ride, and every ride had a final passenger. I looked at the crowd one last time, and then I stepped off the bus. My feet touched the stone platform. The trees shuddered, and behind me, the doors hissed shut. The engine roared. Bus 7 turned slowly, drove into the trees, and vanished. Gone. No lights, no sound, no trace. Just me standing in that clearing alone, but not for long. The stone beneath my feet began to warm. The platform glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. And in my chest, I felt something change. I wasn't cold anymore. I wasn't scared. I was part of it. I don't know how long I stood there. Time was different. Maybe minutes, maybe years. Eventually, I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, unsure. A young man stepped into the clearing, wide-eyed, clutching a binder. He looked terrified. I smiled. And then I spoke the words Hank had once said to me. You saw it, didn't you? The new driver nodded. His hands shook. I handed him the binder. He looked at me, confused. Where do I go? You already know, I said. Just follow the road and obey the rules. He turned, got on the bus, and drove off. And I stayed behind, because this was the final rule, the one no one wrote down. Once you finish the route, you become part of the mountain. Now I watch. I wait. I guide. And when the next one comes, lost and afraid, I'll be here. Because the mountain never sleeps. It just takes turns.